Okay, we're going to leave the continent of Africa and we're going to go over to the Americas. And we're going to start off with the Native American Indians. I'm going to show you how they are Israelites, and I'm going to show you how they even thought like the prophets of old. We're going to look at some of their visions from the past. This is Encyclopedia of North American Indians by Frederick E. Hoxie. He's the editor. This was copyrighted in 1996. 600. On page 600, we're going to drop down to Smohala, 1815 to 1895. Wanapum, Shaman, and Prophet. On page 601, it says, Smohala reputation grew quickly. Like all successful plateau shamans, Smohala could accurately predict the arrival of the annual salmon runs, foretell where root diggers would find fertile grounds, and direct hunters to game herds. But he also had a reputation for being able to predict earthquakes and eclipses. Skeptical whites claimed that Smohala got this information from an almanac, but the shaman claimed that spirits told him of these things because he was faithful to the traditional religion of his people. They followed Yahweh, the Most High. We're going to read here. I'm going to read the paragraph over, and it reads, Finally, he taught that those who cut up the lands or sign papers for the lands will be defrauded of their rights and will be punished by God's anger. So he's talking about how the so-called white man came over and took the lands of the Native American Indians, that eventually they're going to be defrauded of their rights. Let's read down. Let's go down to here. It reads here, After a while, Smohala proclaimed, when God is ready, he will drive away all the people except the people who have obeyed the laws. What laws? The laws of the Most High. Then those who obeyed the Washani Creed would experience new life. That's resurrection. All the dead men will come to life again. Smohala asserted their spirits will come to their bodies again. So he knew that if they kept these laws, only those who obeyed the Most High's laws would experience new life and be resurrected. So even the Native American Indians knew this. Here's a picture of the age Smohala. These were black Indians. See that? Whole tribe of black Indians. See? Let me show you something else in this book. Here's another tribe. It's called Chumash. These are the Chumash Indians, and these Indians were in California. Okay? They were in Oakland and Los Angeles. The Chumash Indians. You know what Chumash means? Chumash means Torah, meaning lawgivers, those who keep the laws of God. These are the Chumash Indians. All right, now I have a book. Here's a book. This is the Chumash. It's the Torah, 5 books of Moses. See that? The Torah, 5 books of Moses with commentary. And you can see an imprint of the Torah on the front. And it has the 5 books on here. And it's going from right to left. Bereshith, which is Genesis. See that? Noah. You know, so it goes into the Hebrew commentary, so forth, right? But it's called the Chumash. The Chumash. And these are the Chumash Indians. They kept the laws of the Most High. They were one of the most prestigious group of Indians in the continent of America. They had everything you could think of, all the amenities that you could think of based on their intellect, the things that they did. There were the island Chumashes, occupying the 4 channel islands of Santa Cruz, Santa Rosa, San Miguel, and Anacapa. Finally, there were the interior settlements located up to 75 miles into the mountainous valleys of present-day Santa Barbara County. These were the Chumashes. More information about the Native Americans in this book called Light and Truth. The Bible in Ancient and Modern History. Universal History of the Colored and the Indian Race. This was published in 1844. And as you can see here, published by a committee of colored gentlemen. Let's go over to page 260. Page 260. We're going to go to the second paragraph. It reads, Mr. Adair is very full in this that the Indians have but one God, the great Yahweh, whom they call the great, beneficent, supreme, and Holy Spirit, who dwells above the clouds, and who dwells with good people, and in the only object of worship. So different are they from all the idolatrous heathen upon earth. He assures that they hold this great divine spirit as the immediate head of their community, which opinion he conceives they must have derived from the ancient theocracy in Israel. He assures that the Indians, meaning the native Indians, Native Americans, are intoxicated with religious pride and call all other people the accursed people, and have time out of mind been accustomed to hold them in great contempt. Their ancestors, they boast to have been under the immediate government of Yahweh, who was with them and directed them by his prophets, while the rest of the world were outlaws and strangers to the covenant of Yahweh. The Indians thus pleased themselves, Mr. Adair assures us, with the idea that God, the Most High, has chosen them from the rest of mankind as his peculiar people. This, he says, has been the concession of their hating other people and of viewing themselves hated by all men. These things show that they acknowledge but one power. All right, so he gets into the Peruvians and the race of Incas, how they came from Assyria. And came into the land of America. Okay. This is a book called The History of the American Indians. And this book was written by James Adair in London in 1775. This is on page 43. It reads, Adair's History, a complete Indian system. Adair, too, had his kink. He believed all the Indians of America to be descended from the Jews. His book contains a great deal of real instructions on its subject, only requiring the reader to be constantly on his guard against the wonderful obliquities of his theory. And you can see who is referring this. This is Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson was sending this to John Adams. June 11, 1812. These were the founders of the 13 colonies here in America. I'm going to go to page 239. I'm going to read here, I presume. It reads, I presume enough have been said to point out the similarities between the rites and customs of the Native American Indians and those of the Israelites, and that the Indian system is derived from the moral, ceremonial, and judicial laws of the Hebrews, though now but a faint copy of the divine original. Their religious rites, marital customs, dress, music, dances, and domestic forms of life seem clearly to evince also that they came to America in early times, before sects had sprung up among the Jews, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which was soon after their prophet ceased. This is when they were cast into the Babylon, Persian, and the Medes captivity, and before arts and sciences had arrived to any perfection. Otherwise, it is likely they would have returned some knowledge of them, at least where they first settled, it being in a favorable climate, and consequently they were in a more compact body than on his northern part of the American continent. So as you see, the research has been done that the Native Americans were Israelites. James Adair. This is General Observations on the Northern American Indians, displaying their love for country, their marital spirit, their caution in war, method of fighting, barbarity toward their captives, instances of their fortitude and magnanimity in the view of death, their rewards of public services, their manner of crowning their words after victory, their games, method of fishing and of building, their utensils and manufactures, conduct in domestic life, their laws, form of government, etc. So these are the general observations of the North American Indians. I'm going to read this part. It says, the reason they are most earnest than the rest of mankind in maintaining that divine law of equal freedom and justice, I apprehend, is the notion imbibed from their supposed Hebrew ancestors of the divine theocracy, and that inexpressible abhorrence of slavery which must have taken place after their captivity by the Assyrians or the Babylonians. So these are the 10 tribes who left pursuant to 2nd Ezra, chapter 13. So these researchers, these explorers, these scholars knew that the Native American Indians came from so-called Middle East, but we know it as Northeast Africa or West Asia. Okay, I'm going to read about this. This is an article on the Northern Indian tribes. And I know a lot of these names that I'm about to read here are of what we would consider today African Americans, but these are Native Americans. It says 1830, a large group of red bones settled on the west side of the Sabine River in what is today called Newton County, Texas. Now, this was East Texas, near Louisiana. A set of red bone Indians were there. It says some of the family names in that area were Adams, Bass, Bennett, Bond, Brack, Brown, Clark, Coleman, Cole, Collins, Davis, Droddy, Hall, Harper, Hart, James, Johnson, Knight, Lee,
Lewis, Martin, Maddox, Moore, Nash, Page, Parker, Perkins, Powell, Smith, Stringer, Taylor, Thompson, Weeks, West, White, Willis, Williams, Woods, Wright, and Young. These are the new Anglo-Saxon names, which these natives, these red-bone natives, changed their names, their Indian names, to the Anglo-Saxon names, these slave masters' names. All right? So these are the new names, and these are African Americans, all of them. This is April 1830. Here's another one. Relations between the Texans and Mexico reached a new low when Mexico forbid further immigration into Texas by settlers from the United States. 1831, William Ashworth had immigrated from Louisiana, and many friends and relatives, Redbone. So this is like Leesville, Louisiana. This is near Lake Charles, Louisiana. So William Ashworth had immigrated from Louisiana, and many friends and relatives, Redbone families, followed him. The Ashworths immigrated to Louisiana from South Carolina in 1799. During the Revolution against Mexico, William and Abner Ashworth paid Gibson Perkins and Elijah Thomas to take their places in the Texas Army. The Ashworths were classified as free blacks and were land and slave owners. See that? So you had African Americans who were slave owners, and also they would enslave red-bone Indians. See that? And then they would sell them, and then they would sell them from one plantation to the next. And this is how you got all these names above here. So the Native Americans are dark-skinned, black, brown, to light brown.
This is a book called The Yucatan, Before and After the Conquest by Friar Diego de Landa. This Dover edition, first published in 1978, is an unabridged republication of the work originally published in the publication number 20 by the Maya Society, Baltimore, in 1937, in an edition of 80 copies. Many of the illustrations were originally hand-tinted. All are black and white in the present edition. The work is a translation of Relación de las Cosas de Yucatan, a manuscript of 1566. 1566 manuscript. How about that? So these were the first explorers. We're going to go to page 8. Let's look at this insert. Section 5, Provinces of Yucatan, its principal ancient structures. I'm going to read this paragraph highlighted. It reads, some old men of Yucatan say that they have heard from their ancestors that this country was peopled by a certain race who came from the east, whom the Most High delivered by opening for them 12 roads through the sea. If this is true, all the inhabitants of the Indies must be of Israelite descent, because the Straits of Magellan having been passed, they must have spread over more than 2,000 leagues of territory, now governed by Spain. So this is before the conquistadors came. This is during the time of the Phoenicians this happened. The language of this country is all one, a fact which aided greatly in its conversion. Although the coast there are differences in words and accents, those living on the coast are thus more polished in their behavior and language, and the women cover their breasts, which those further inland do not. So this chapter is telling you how the 10 tribes got to the Americas. Okay, and it's fitting the prophecies of 2nd Ezra chapter 13. There's a book called Christopher Columbus and the Participation of the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese Discoveries by Kayserling, Dr. M. Kayserling. This book was printed in 1894. We're going to jump over to page 97. Now, there's a lot of discrepancies dealing with these authors and the 12 tribes of Israel, or the 10 tribes of Israel who were scattered and settled in Arcereth, which is the America. But we're just going to read this to stay on topic. It reads, "It is not improbable that the Jews who were driven from Nineveh by Shalmaneser wandered into uninhabited regions. According to Herrera, the Indians cherished the tradition that Yucatan, which is in Central America, had been settled by tribes from the Orient. Several writers give the exact route by which the Jews traveled until they settled in Cuba. Lord Kingsborough even asserts that they crossed the Bering Straits and then proceeded to Mexico and Peru. We know that's not true. We know they took the way of the Euphrates, came around Africa into the Americas. And you can check the ocean wind currents to find out how that happened. So these are the Israelites. These are some of the 10 tribes. There were some in Africa. There were some in Europe. There were some in Asia. There were some all over the world, but the majority came to the Americas. Okay? And so I want to show you this, that we had brethren here in the Americas in the early days. I'm going to talk about this book because some interesting facts about this that I need to go into. This is Ivan van Sertima's book called They Came Before Columbus. This book was copyrighted in 1976. First place I want to take you is page 80, because when we read these old books, we always hear about how the Caucasians started civilization in all these countries. But I want to make a main point, and the reason why I'm going here, I want to just talk about the Mexican prophet called Quasi Coto. The Mexican Quasi Coto was the fine feathered snake. Now, you know, the Israelites, they didn't worship the snake until they started going off, but the snake was a symbol of healing. When Moses held up the snake, that was a form of healing. But after a while, when you read Chronicles, the Israelites started to worship this snake, which was called Rephaim. We did away with the snake, but even the Igbos in Africa were worshiping the snake as well. But the Mexican Quasi Coto was the fine feathered snake. He was also the symbol of water or moisture produced by rain, which after a long drought awakens vegetation to new life. So Quasi Coto was like a prophet. He came and got the house in order, all the houses in order in South America and Central America, with their data and with their calendars. I'm going to flip over to page 77, and I'm going to read here. It reads, "The Asiatic Quasi Coto is found in the world of the Incas, the black Quasi Coto in Mexico, and the Yucatan." So Quasi Coto was not white; he was black. And it's telling you in Mexico and the Yucatan, he was considered black. Let's drop down to where I highlighted this. None are European in facial contour. Who are they talking about? Quasi Coto. This says his arguments are ingenious, but when he represents sculptures of the white Quasi Coto, they all speak very clearly against his case. They are all native or Asiatic, or blackface, or non-human. None are European in facial contour. Let's go over here. This is page 76. This main source of confusion over his appearance has been the use of the word white in some oral traditions. This word has been completely misinterpreted by many scholars and has led to the most fanciful notions that it was a European who innovated civilization and religious reform in America. The myth and ritual, the pattern of religious expression in America differs sharply from that of Europe. The Catholic friars finding the cross of America, the cross is also found in pre-Christian Africa and had nothing to do there with Christ. Remember, the Kojic Church were the first Christians, not Rome. Pounced on the term white bearded figure and claimed that Quasi Coto was St. Thomas or St. Brendan. In 1949, P.M. Hansen even made claims for Quasi Coto as a reincarnated Yahweh Shai, or Jesus Christ. Reincarnated Jesus Christ. As Basil Hendrick points out, the Quasi Coto of the Mexican Valley documents was never blonde or fair, as stated by the friars, the French friars, but virtually always pictured as black-bearded, and in illustrations had his face painted black. No, he was black. The truth is, white is a purely European convention when used as an exclusive referent for skin color and race. White in American Indian terms did not mean in pre-Columbian times Caucasian. Quasi Coto did not have Northern European features. Native Americans spoke of him at times as being white in a symbolic sense, in the way Muslims may speak of Muhammad as a handful of white light in Allah's palm. A black or brown Negroid Hamitic man, as Uba Bakari was, appearing out of the east in long flowing white Muslim robes, would be called white. White may also be used as a referent of skin for pale Asiatics like the Japanese. Mokot Ape relates in a narrative published in 1725 that when a band of white bearded figures hunting the Pacific coast in a post-Columbian period were hunted down, they were found to be Japanese. Even in this instance, the term white used as a literal referent for the skin of the Japanese was a post-Columbian linguistic influence. So Quasi Coto was a black man, and they often referred him as being Jesus Christ, being resurrected in South America. But I look at him as being a prophet of that day, who spoke in the Holy Scriptures. This is before pre-Columbian times. These are Negro heads in the Americas. See that? And these all came on vessels from the east. Mochica Negroid portrait vessel from Peru circa 900 AD. Arab African contact period. See that? So the Israelites who traveled with the Carthaginians were black to the Americas. Now, let's get into our Hispanic brothers and let's see why we consider them our brothers as well. Because when the Spanish came, something happened. And we have records. So let's check out the records. This is a book called The 10 Tribes of Israel, historically identified with the Aborigines of the Western Hemisphere. Montezuma by Barbara Ann Simon. That's Montezuma. All right. Now, this is on page 262, and it says Statistical Exposition of the Present State of Mexico. The following sketch of the present aspect of Mexico is from the pen of a citizen of that place, and appeared in the Philadelphia Evening Post, February 19, 1831. The population of the Mexican states is nearly 8 million. It has increased ever since 1794, when it was only 5 million. And even during the Civil War, the Revolution, and Independence, since in 1806 it was only 5,500,000. The population is divided as follows. This is the point. So this is Mexico. Number 1, it says the most numerous are the pure Indians, which are about 4 million. Okay. We have the mestizos, or offsprings of Indians and Spaniards, are about 2 million. Remember, this was in 1806. So, out of the mestizos, or offspring of Indians and Spaniards, are about 2 million. So we got a lot of our brothers already starting to change shade. See that? Number 3, the Creoles, or offspring of the Spaniards, are about 1 million. This is the friars, the French, coming down. See that? The Creoles, or offspring of the Spaniards, are about 1 million. Number 4, the Zambos, or offspring of Indians and Negroes. Number 4, the Zambos, some say Zumbies, or offspring of Indians and Negroes, including the mulattoes of white and black blood, and many of mixed origin, about 600,000. The Negroes, about 100,000. So you got all factors. Number 6, the Quahapins, or Spaniards born in Spain, were 80,000 before the Revolution and late expulsion, now reduced to 10,000. See that? Number 7, the strangers of various nations, British, French, Germans, Italians, Americans, about 15,000. Now these men were taking the women of the slain soldiers and having babies. And some of the men took some of the women missionaries and was having babies. Okay? So we have various shades of brown throughout the Americas, and even in the northern part of Africa. This went on heavily in South America. And so this is how we got our brothers who look like light Mexican all the way up to the dark Cubans or Brazilians in the Americas. There's Israelites amongst us. This is why we go and we teach amongst the Gentiles to pull our people out of this. All right? We have to have that patience and that charity to help our people come out of these Gentile state of minds. These are the statistics. And again, this was in the 1806, so this is quadrupled. This is why we say of Negro or Native American Indian and Latino descent. So I hope this was helpful to you. Hope this was a blessing. Try not to discriminate against your brethren. And Shalom.
This is the word of the Lord of hosts. I took you from the pastures and from following the sheep to be prince over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and have destroyed all the enemies in your path. I will make you a great name among the great ones of the earth. I will assign a place for my people in Israel. There I will plant them, and they shall dwell in their own land.